29 November 2023, hierdie aflewering van Beskuit en koffie, het bietjie laat hoor, ek het 'n rowwe dag gehad, en ek het daai Briekmerke gedoen wat ek gedoen het oor die VF+, en ek het Janie en vroeër en nog vroegoggend gedoen oor die patriote en die verraaiers. Toe het ek die dag by die bank gespandeer oor 'n pot kak wat jy nie kan glo nie, maar daaroor gaan ek 'n hele Briekmerk op sy eie doen. Kom ons kyk nou, wat sê die nuus alles? En ek gaan nou sommer begin met hierdie oulike stukkie nuus. Tradisionele leiers kry hulle verkiesingsbonus. Terwyl jong kinders in die strate van Limpopo rondstaan in hoop vir kos met die gedagte om weer terug te keer na 'n informele huis waar water slegs per geleentheid beskikbaar is en sanitasie nie na behore is nie, is die Limpopo premier, Tshupo Stanley Matabata, op maandag 27 November in Polokwane besig om 'n amptelike seremonie 57 splinternuwe voertuie soos suigstokkies uit te deel aan tradisionele leiers. Hierdie voertuie gaan die belastingbetaler maar net R540.000 elk uit die sak jaag vir die 2023-2024 finansiële jaar. In 'n onderhoud bevestig die premier dat dit egter nie die einde van die verkwisting van belastinggeld is nie. Die tradisionele leiers gaan verder bederf word met die oprigting en onderhoud van hulle kantore ter waarde van R25 miljoen met 'n ekstra 5 miljoen om die kantore toe te rus. Die provinsie het ongeveer 6,4 miljoen mense waarvan die werkloosheid byna 50% is. Meer belangrik is die tekort aan essensiële dienste soos gesondheidsorg. Klinieke is afhanklik van gedeeltelike voorsiening van elektrisiteit, weens beurtkrag, waar kragopwekkers die nood van mense kon verlig indien die regering sou behaag. Dit was egter nie so nie. Skole is nog in 'n meer benarde posisie, waar pittoilette aan die orde van die dag is. Nou ek gaan nie verder lees nie, ek dink jy het nou genoeg gehoor van daai kak daar, maar neemt kennis. Dis Julius Malema se home country daai hoor, wat hy maar lekker besteel het hoor. En die ondersteuner skryf hier onderaan: hier is 'n lekker Briekmerk, ry hom full throttle. Ja, daar sit hy. En dan kom ons by hierdie bietjie interessante goedjies. Packages held hostage, service denied, as post office is forcefully evicted from the Midrand Mall. The South African Post Office has been forcefully evicted from its branch in the Boulders shopping centre, leaving dependents frustrated with packages locked inside the office. Great country that we live in. Great management by the black government, not ANC government, black government. And here's some more news, more efficiency from the black government. Joburg markets, 32 million generator leaves fresh produce rotting. Thousands of tons of fresh produce worth an estimated 10 million rand is rotting on the Joburg fresh market floor. How is that as a monument for effective and efficient management? But that management that I've just spoken about is an illusion in South Africa. And then we have this. Bloemfontein man arrested in a major abalone bust. In a significant operation, members of the Bloemfontein and Provincial Stock Theft Units apprehended a 46-year-old man last night in connection with a substantial consignment of abalone. And that is how our coastal resources are raped. Most prominent is the absence of decent law and order in South Africa. We don't have an efficient law and order in South Africa. We have black law and order. And yes, I want you to be as irritated as you can be about me calling everything fucking black now. Because I cannot do otherwise. Because I must read every day how shit whites were. Were. Past tense. Those shit whites gave you a fully functional country. What did you blacks do with it? Fuck it up. Because that's easier than to maintain it. And here is a joke. Cabinet is discussing urgent rail and port crisis. President Cyril Ramaphosa's spokesman Vincent Magwenya said. What a fucking joke. An urgent meeting about the port and the rail crisis. Do these guys think they can fix the fucking railway that they fucked up over 30 years, they can fix it urgently? But that is the levels of intelligence that we have to deal with. And at last, July unrest instigator Mdumezini Zuma gets 12 years prison sentence. How many years after the fact? Ramaphosa asks African countries to act against gender pay gaps with urgency. According to the WEF, South African women earns between 23 and 35% less than males. That is what they keep themselves busy with. And now you must hear this from this fucking Einstein, Ronald Lamola. White employers fuel racial and xenophobic violence by hiring foreigners. According to Ronald Lamola, Lamola addressed concerns about xenophobia and farm attacks at the UN Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Now, they must justify their racial discrimination. And he pops out, genius pops out with this one, about foreigners. But what he would obviously not say is that many people, business people, prefer to employ foreigners because the foreigners do not belong to unions. And as we all know, it was the unions that started to fuck the economy up with their ridiculous demands for pay, with zero focus on training and teaching their members, and with no attention paid to productivity. But what can you do? Superior logic and natural intelligence wins the day, every day. And then I saw this video from that Citizens Concerned girl. And the headline is, "You won't believe his new conspiracy theory. King of lies, Julius Malema cannot contain himself." And in that specific video is a speech where Malema made a statement, and listen to this cock, made a statement that there's only a small number of white women that know how to pay the government salaries. If you remove them, and he calls them Afrikaners, you remove them, no government official in South Africa will get a salary. That is what he shouts out from a podium. And if you just go onto the SARS site, onto the Minister of Finance site, the Treasury site, it gives you a full explanation of how the government salary software system works. And it's got photos of all the leading people in those things, and amazingly enough, here and there you see a white person, the rest is all blacks. But this fucker, he can stand on the stage and he tells the people that there's a small number of white Afrikaner women that is the only people that know how the salary system works. But in any case, his IQ, obviously he can't figure out how that system works. That's why he spews shit like this. The problem is, He spews this shit, and those people sitting in the audience, they believe the cock. They don't go and check the facts. They just take the story and run. Same with his shit that whites own 72% of the land in South Africa. Incidentally, that's 72%. Same story was used in Kenya, and the same story was used in, I think, Uganda, and the same story was used in Zimbabwe. That same figures, 72%, 72%, 72%. So that is a mantra from XXX that they feed these people, these dimwits, useful idiots. They are being fed those numbers, and these things they just spew it out without thinking. I'm busy working on a Skidmark about Limpopo specifically and the land distribution there, and it is eye-opening. And we have this. Mchunu will not ask Ramaphosa to declare state of disaster over a collapsing water infrastructure, the Minister of Water and Sanitation said. So it's not a disaster, but I mean, you know how many people are without water for hours and some for days. And pollution and the rivers is fucked. And I read an article earlier today, some spot in Durban, in KwaZulu, where the people are dependent on a cluster of plastic tanks to provide them with water. And this morning, they found a corpse in one tank. Now nobody can use any of those tanks. That is South Africa. But let's go overseas a bit. And then you see 5 dead in Philippines mega flood. 5 people died in the Philippines due to severe flooding on the island of Samar, while more than 400,000 people were evacuated. Looks like the drought is broken. And this is one that made me smile. North Korea has sent up a spy satellite, and the Americans were very upset about it. And listen now to Rocket Day. North Korea claims it has obtained photos of the White House and a variety of sensitive US military sites thanks to its new spy satellite, which it previously said would be used to monitor American and South Korean forces. In comments carried by the state-run Korean Central Media Agency on Tuesday, said the country's leader Kim Jong-un had reviewed satellite imagery of US military and government facilities in major target regions, including the Pentagon and even the White House itself. And I can assure you, the Americans are fucking fuming. Russian forces encircle a key DPR town. After months of back and forth, Russian forces have encircled the AFU-held town of Avdiivka from all directions in the DPR. Russian forces have reportedly been slowly moving the front line westwards even since the apparent failure of Ukraine's counteroffensive, despite the government in Kiev's vocal push for more offensive maneuvers. Now, just for those of you that are not so totally up to date with the happenings in the Ukraine, this little town, Avdiivka, it was a major battle, and it's been lasting, I think it's been going on there for maybe 3-4 months. But the Russians did not try to invade the town. They, almost like a U-shape, encircled the town. And the Ukrainians kept on pushing forces and machinery in to keep on to hold the town down. And the Russians just grind them up as it come, with very little losses on the Russian side, and major losses on the Ukrainian side. And Avdiivka was the stronghold from which the Ukrainians were bombarding Donetsk city. And apparently, I haven't seen any photographic evidence yet, we're waiting for it. Apparently, that Avdiivka was turned into a major fortress by the Ukrainians since 2014. So they were well bunkered in there. And the Russians did not see the sense in storming it. So they just strangled it, and now it looks like they're throttling it. If Avdiivka fall, it's going to be a major PR issue for Zelensky. Here's another one. Russian Mi-28 helicopters destroyed the Ukrainian strongholds near Donetsk. Russian military pilots launched missiles at the located enemy fortified positions, wiping one Ukrainian armed forces command post and armored hardware off. Now, again, it is close to Donetsk city. These are the fortified positions from which they were bombing the civilians in Donetsk. And Putin, he was under a lot of pressure to stop the bombing of Donetsk. But the military commanders told him that if they try and storm those places, the cost in manpower for Russia will be extremely high. And they didn't want to use heavy bombs because it will wipe those little villages out. And here we have that governor of the WEF colony called, previously known as the United Kingdom. Now it's now a WEF colony, complete with a WEF governor called Rishi Sunak. British Prime Minister Sunak does not show respect for the Prime Minister and the entire country, the Greek government spokesman said in an interview. After he cancelled the meeting with his Greek counterpart a few hours before they were due to meet over Greece's claims to the return of the Parthenon sculptures, which are stored in a British museum. But that is what they do. And then the Czech president. The West has broken the promises to Ukraine of military support. In an interview with Corriere della newspaper, he noted that the level of supplies of weapons and equipment was insufficient. We have not fulfilled our promises to supply Ukrainians with artillery ammunition and pilot training for F-16s, which is not progressing as quickly as we would like. But I'm going to give you a little bit of background here. First of all, Europe has basically been disarmed. They've given everything they had to Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are in dire need of 155mm ammunitions. And here comes the kicker. The whole of Europe, all the EU nations together, can produce 4,000 rounds per month. America is a little bit better off. They produce between 25 and 30,000 rounds per month. 30,000 a month in America, 4,000 in Europe. The consumption on the battlefront is some days up to 50,000 rounds. But we've got a problem here. We can see America is busy sorting its shit out to pull out of it. They're going to walk away from Ukraine and they're going to leave the Europeans with a bucket. Now, the Europeans were so vocal and so challenging and so aggressive towards Russia, big mouths, because the Americans were with them. Now it's quite clear the Americans cannot sustain that shit there. And the Americans are going to pull out, and the Europeans are realizing that. And now they're beginning to panic, because they were saying all along they are fighting in Ukraine to keep Russia out of Europe. Now they see they're going to lose in Ukraine, and now they think, okay, Russia's got to come from it. And I listened to a very interesting debate last night in which the guy said that Putin learned his lessons from the West in the past 15 years. And that is, number one, that the West cannot be trusted with treaties. And he also, it is undeniably so, the West wants to destroy Russia. And Putin is hanging on to his control of the Russian politics for a reason that he is going to make sure that Russia is secured and protected against attacks from the West. And now the Europeans are beginning to worry, because if you look at the Baltics, they were extremely vocal and aggressive. Those Baltics, St. Petersburg's local police force can take any one of those Baltic states. the local police force. They don't even have to bring the army. The other problem is that the West, the Europeans, they cannot take a war with Russia. The Finn people, Finland was clever to cancel a 40-year agreement of neutrality between them and Russia and up to join NATO. Now the Finnish are in a flat fucking panic. They are busy actually structuring border fence with Russia because they've got a long border with Russia. They're now building a fence at a massive cost, and they don't have enough soldiers to protect that fence. So they all followed the newcons in the shithouse instructions and fucked their own environment up with Russia. Now they're panicking. They're seeing the Americans are going to pull out. The American economy is far better off than the European economy. The European economy is fucked. All because of their sanctions against Russia. So the guy is of the opinion that Putin is going to try and get that Russian western border secured before he steps out. Now, one night I listened to an interview that the guy had with Putin. He was talking to a press club or something, and one of the guys quoted one of the Russian emperors, Alexander I think, or something like that, and said he opened the window to the west. And the reporter asked Putin, are you now going to close that window? And Putin, classic Putin, he smiled and he said, listen, when the wind blows cold, it is necessary to pull the window closer. Just not leave it wide open. You just have to close it a bit. And that's what's going on. They were looking for it. But in any case, I thought I'm going to mention a few of these things to you. I'm not going to talk much about Israel. I see that more Israeli hostages was released by Hamas, and the population in Ukraine is beginning to get very aggressive about, they say, dissent in Ukraine, growing over the grinding mobilization program, because Zelensky is now calling up pregnant women as going to the front, taking students out of university. It is a bull's-up. He doesn't want to listen. And the West urges him on to do it. And then you get this. Finland to demolish the former Russian Consulate General building in Turku. Why? But that's what they do. They remind me of what's happening here in South Africa. And then we have the head of Ukraine's servant of the people faction, David Arakamaya, claims Kiev deputies have been waiting for a military strategy for a long time, and that in fact no one at all has such a plan. The headline is, Ukrainian military has no plan for 2024. Well, they should maybe think about a plan of surrendering. And here, listen to this one. EU boosts Finland-Russia border with more guards. The EU has sent patrol vehicles and an additional 50 troops. 50 troops to the European border. And the Coast Guard agency to the border between Finland and Russia to strengthen controls. Shame. Yippee, 50. Oh, and then this one I'm going to read to you. Argentina's president-elect converts to Judaism. Javier Milei took part in a Jewish service in Buenos Aires on November 25, where he received a blessing from a rabbi. Upon arriving in New York on November 27, Milei first went to the grave of the famous Jewish rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. The gesture demonstrates how committed the future leader is to deepening Argentina's cultural and political ties with Israel. I don't know how that is going to work out for him. Now here's something to laugh about. Czech Republic wants Russian steel sanctions exemption. The Czech Republic is asking to exclude Russian steel from the EU sanctions list until 2028. Czech Minister of Industry said. Joseph Sikela said that the products from the Russian Federation are superior in quality to competitors and his country cannot do without it in construction according to Euractiv. Politico had previously reported that the Czech Republic asked the EU to extend preferential imports of products from the Novolipsk iron and steel works to support the country's key automobile industry. That is how Europe screwed themselves. Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó told CNBC that Budapest will never send weapons to Ukraine, saying that the more weapons delivered, the longer the war will take. But nobody listens to them. And then I got this from Satanyao. We have to demilitarize Gaza after the destruction of Hamas. We have to de-radicalize Gaza, and then we have to rebuild Gaza. How cool. And there's something. Trudeau resignation wanted by 3 in 4 Canadians. According to a new Ipsos poll, 72% of Canadians want Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to step down, from 60% in September. Even 33% of voters backing his Liberal Party want him gone, up from 28% in September. But I don't know, these guys, they hang on for dear life. So it is quite clear. The world is in turmoil. Here in South Africa we've got problems. I don't know what is going to be the outcome. But the dilapidation of vital services like the rails, the ports and the electricity does not spell anything positive and good for the country. Well, a little bit late, but it's never too late to have a coffee and biscuit. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.